everyone. I hope everyone is having a great Thursday. So let me share that screen. Um, it should be loading. You should be able to see it now. So welcome back. We have more SQL today. The good news is that no one is gonna get killed today. Don't worry. We're working on a completely different case, so we're safe. We're safe. So we are on week 13, and specifically, we're going to be working with this lecture, the Handling Null Values SQL lecture. So if you're not there yet, I'm just going to give you some time while I introduce the class to get there. I also have some good news, especially for those of you that are having some issues with Codio. Juan worked super hard on this, actually. He created a guide that was shared in official announcements to be able to run SQL locally. So if you're having issues with Codio, you could try that. If you didn't do that before class, if you didn't see that announcement, maybe I would suggest for this class to continue working on Codio, and then for the next SQL class, then you can download the proper software on your computer, so you can work directly on your computer if you're having a lot of issues in SQL. Both are exactly the same. Let me show you. So, for example, here's the SQL one, and then I'm gonna open the one in my computer. Once you have downloaded it, it's the same as downloading any other program on your computer. Look that it looks the same. A little bit more modern. This one looks like from the 90s, but it's exactly the same. It has the same buttons, the same windows, so everything works the same. So you have those two options. Um, so if you're having issues with Codio, I would strongly suggest going through that guide so you can install it on your local computer. You can also ask for help to your TAs. If you have it in your local computer, you're gonna need the data file, the database file. So let me send it to you guys in the chat so you can use it. And then there's a third alternative if you wanted to, which is also okay. So this is the link with the instructions. I'm gonna share in this chat. So this is the link with the instructions. This is the link where you would download the program if you're on Windows or Mac. And in these instructions, you have more instructions to know which one to download. But here's the direct download link if you need. And if you want to run it outside of Codio but not download anything onto your computer, you also have this alternative. So this is the online alternative. This one looks a little bit different. Um, so the main thing here is that you would have to click on this plus, open SQL, and then find the database, and then everything works the same. It looks a little bit different, so maybe this is an option that I will play around with this weekend and use it next class. You have the option to use whatever you want. You can continue on Codio if you want. You can download it on your computer, or you can use this online version. We're just giving you more options if you're having issues with one platform, so you can switch to the other platform, and your TAs are always going to be there to help you out. Um, so I see the questions in the chat. Is this the sequel to the sequel? So we are continuing with sequel. So let's get started on that next lesson. So we are going to be talking about how do we handle null values in SQL. So the goal for today is to work with a data set. This data set contains a lot of missing values. And our whole objective for today is to learn how to deal with those missing values, what to do whenever you have missing values. As a data analyst, this is something that you're going to face all the time. You're going to be given a data set, and most of the time, this data set is going to have some missing values. So you're going to have to make some decisions on how to deal with these missing values. So that's going to be the whole task for today. Let me introduce the case for today with this song. Well, this is the lecture for you. What is the business context? Today, you are a data analyst for the LA Lakers. So it's a basketball related lecture, not High School Musical. I wish it was High School Musical, but it's basketball. So you are a data analyst for the LA Lakers, and you currently work with the finance team. Part of your responsibility is to conduct an analysis to determine how much you should pay a player for their bonus. So this is a very important task. If you're working with a financial team, you have to make sure that you're doing a good analysis because you don't want to mess up with your employees' bonuses and your employees' money. So you have to be really good. It's a big responsibility on our shoulders to be a good analyst when we're working with money. And this is, of course, a fictional business case because we're here learning, but it could very much be a real business case. If you like a sport, you could work as a data analyst for that company. I have a friend that she works as a data analyst for some other basketball team. I don't remember which one it is. So that's one thing. One time I had a student that he used to work as a data engineer, so similar, not quite a data analyst, but similar for McLaren, the team of Formula One. So if you're really, really passionate about sports or a specific sport, that's definitely an avenue. How do you do that? Go onto their career pages and keep an eye out for whenever they post a data analyst position. So you could truly have the job of your dreams if you like sports. There's a lot of data analytics in there. Of course, operational data analytics like this one, which is like finance and figure out payment, but also on how to improve the different moves of the team so they play better. So a lot of cool stuff there. Um, all right. Yes, Janice, I see your comment. You can absolutely be an NFL data analyst. That's totally possible. Same thing with Wendy. I see that you like hockey. I'm also a huge hockey fan, but yeah, if that's something that you're into, definitely a possibility. That's the cool thing about being a data analyst that you can work literally in anything that you want because everywhere there's data. So everywhere needs data analysts. So the business problem is that you need to determine whether your data set has missing values and decide what to do about them and assess how's the state of the data. And based on this information, determine how much money you need to pay to this team member. So specifically, we have a database with all the data regarding LeBron. So we're going to be computing LeBron's bonus payment. And the five criteria to determine the payment is the following one. So if the player averages 30 points in each game where they're active, they will get $500,000. If the player plays at least 65% of the season, they will get another $500,000. If they play against every team at least once during the season, they will get a 100K bonus. If they play in more home games than away games, they will get a $250,000. And if they play in at least one game every month of the season, they will get $50,000. So that's what we are going to be using to determine how much money do we need to pay LeBron this specific year. So potentially he could make, so this is 1 million, 1.4 million dollars potentially if he qualifies for everything, or potentially $0 if he doesn't qualify for any of these criteria. So really, really cool stuff in there. So let's go on to our SQL. If you're on Codio, you can go on Codio as we did with our two previous lectures. If you're on your computer, which is what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna open, I have a Mac, so I'm gonna open it here. But if you have a Windows and you already downloaded it, it's probably on your Start tab, and then you see all the programs um, under the recently downloaded programs. Yeah, so it looks exactly the same way as in Codio. If you didn't do this beforehand, before the class, that's completely fine. I would recommend continuing being on Codio. There's no problem. Whichever way is fine. So I'm gonna open the database as usual. I click on Open Database. And this time I'm gonna be working with Braun.db. So if you're working from your local computer, make sure that you find wherever you downloaded this file. Probably in the downloads file, downloads folder it will be, but wherever you have it. So I'm gonna open it. I'm gonna send it in the chat again in case people need it. Um, and here it is. So this database only has one table. Notice that if I click here, it only says King James, which is going to make our life easier because we don't have to look at multiple tables like in the murder case. We don't have to do joins today, so you can relax for a little bit and forget about the joins. You're going to have to practice them again in the next SQL lectures, but not today. And this is how our database looks like, our table looks like. So let's go and execute SQL, the execute SQL tab, just to warm up. So let's take a look at that table. How do we do that? So we say select star, so I get all the columns from, and the name of my table is King James. How do I know this is the name of my table? If you go and browse data, here is the name of the table, but I'm also telling you so you can just write it down. So select star from King James. Let's follow good practices. So let's just do limit 15 so we don't load all the database at once. In this case, you will probably be fine because I think there's only 82 rows in our data set, which is not a lot. But imagine if you had like 2 million rows and you don't put this limit, your computer would crash, it would freeze. So it's always good practice to put the limit. It would show us only the first 15 rows or whichever number you put in here. So I'm gonna run this, and here I have my result. Um, so yeah, I wanted to stop here for a second, see if everyone is with me, if there's any issues. If you're here with me, send me a thumbs up in the chat. If you're not, let us know what issue do you have. Fantastic. So it seems like we're mostly there. Yeah, you can put any number that you want in here. So if you want 8, 5, it's just only going to change the number of columns that you'll see, but you have complete freedom onto any number of things that you want. If I saw an error on the screen, maybe make sure that you have enough spaces. Like if you don't have enough space here, that worked for me, but that could be the issue with you. I don't really see. Or maybe make sure that you loaded the database, that you click on open and you selected Braun.db. That could also be the other issue. All right. So the first thing that you have to do as a data analyst, regardless where you are, is understanding your data set very well and understanding your domain very well. So for example, for me to be able to run this query, this project, I needed to learn a little bit about basketball. I don't know much about basketball. And this is something that is going to happen if you get a job in an industry that you're not very familiar with. That actually happened to me. I got a job at Royal Caribbean, and I had never taken a cruise in my life. So when I joined the company, I had to learn a lot about the cruising industry so I could do my work. Because yes, I knew everything related to data analytics, but I didn't know this specific topic. So one good approach is to look at our data and try to understand our data. So let's look at our data set and what it has. So the first column is G. G is the number of games. Um, Let me do this. So G is the number of games played in the season. Like someone mentioned in the chat, there will be 82 of those because there's 82 games in a basketball season. So that's why we have 82 rows. So they just go from 1 all the way to 82, accounting for the 82 games that there are on the season. Next, we have GP. GP is games played. So that is given a number to the games that LeBron played because this whole data set is just about LeBron statistics. How did he do during the season? So he played in game number one, number two, number three. He didn't play in game number four, number five. So his fourth game was actually the sixth game of the season. So that's what GP is. Date, pretty self-explanatory. When did the game happen? Month, in which month it happened. Year, in which year it happened. Home, away, whether the game was in their home stadium or in their away stadium. Up is opponent. So just the code for the different teams. So for example, GSW is Golden State Warriors. So that was their opponent. GS is game started. Game started. So if LeBron started on in that game, so if he was at the beginning of the game, it's a 1. If he was not at the beginning of like a game, it's a 0. But if he didn't play the game at all, you would just have a missing value because he didn't play. Then we have these reps. This is rebounds. So that's when did they gain possession of the ball after missing a shot? AST is assists. So how many times did LeBron help someone score? Steal, how many times LeBron stole the ball from the opposite team? BLK is block, so how many times did LeBron blocked the other team from scoring? PF is personal fouls. This is the same as in soccer, where it's like if you do something that you're not allowed to another player, like grab them by their t-shirt or something like that, is a foul. And those are bad. You're not supposed to be doing that. And then PTS is just points. How many points did LeBron score on that game? So for all these metrics, you want all of them to be up because, of course, the more points you have, the more game starts you have, the more rebounds you have, the better, except personal fouls. Personal fouls is the only one that you want this number to be as low as possible because it's like a penalty, something that you did bad. So now we understand our data set a little bit better. And I see that question in the chat. So that question in the chat about the nulls, that's precisely what we're going to be focusing on today. So that's a great question because it opens the door to what we're going to be talking about next. So you might notice these null values in here. It basically means that the value is missing. What we're going to learn is what does it mean if a value is missing? How do you handle those missing values? So that's what we're going to cover today. For those of you that are still maybe having issues with the database, make sure there's two things that you need to make sure. You open the database and make sure that you're loading brand.db. So if your error is I can't find the King James table, is because you haven't opened that database. Also, make sure that if you're working on Codio, you're in today's lecture, because otherwise you would only see the database for the murder case. So you need to be in today's lecture if you're working from Codio. So that's probably one of the few things that you could be having an issue with. Um, All right, cool. So let's talk about null values. What are these null values that we see in here? So let me pull up these slides again. We already covered this. And let's talk about null values. So null, whenever you see a null, sometimes they're also, you don't see null, you see something like this, N-A-N. N-A-N, it means not a number. Null, it just means it's just a special marker. Both things just indicate that that specific value doesn't exist in the database. It's missing. We're learning this in the context of SQL, but of course, in Excel, you could have missing values. In Python, you could have missing values. Even in Tableau, when you load a file, you could have missing values. So whatever you're going to learn today is valuable in any tool that you're going to work with. But today, we're going to deal with it from the SQL perspective. So in Excel, whenever you have a missing value, the cell would just be empty, end of story. But in SQL, it can't just be empty because if it's just empty, it's actually something. It will be like the, so for example, let's say if it's October, is like this. That's why we have October. But if you have just two quotes with nothing in there, it would create like a blank. But that still has meaning because it's like a text string that is there. Null just means like the value is completely missing. You don't have anything for that specific cell. So it is important to note that the null values represent missing data and they're not the same thing as the value zero. So just because something is missing, it doesn't mean that it's zero. And we're gonna look at a few examples. Zero is a value itself. It's not that something is missing, is that something is zero. Where null, it just completely means that it's missing and they need to be differentiated. This is going to be useful for you when you're creating a data set, but also when you're working with a given data set. So let's explore this a little bit more. Let's look at the block column. So this block column indicates whether how many times LeBron was able to block a team from scoring a point. So we see the numbers here. So in the first game, he only blocked once. In the second game, he actually didn't block at all. In the third game, he blocked two times. But then if we look in the fourth game, there's a null value. And in this case, it makes sense because LeBron did play in these three games, but he didn't play in this fourth game. He was benched or whatever happened to LeBron on that specific game. So the block, it means that that data was not collected because he didn't play. You shouldn't put here a zero because if you wanted to know in how many games did LeBron didn't block anyone, uh, and you put a zero here, it will make it seem like he was kind of bad because he was just not blocking people, which is not the case. Like he didn't play here. It's not like we don't know what would have happened. Maybe he would have blocked three people. Maybe he would have blocked no one. So that's why you should leave this null value in here and not put a zero. This zero in here, on the other hand, it tells us a different story. It tells us he did play, he just didn't block anyone. So in this case, this null value is meaningful. This is a meaningful missing value. It tells us something. In this specific case, it tells us he wasn't playing. So we don't have that specific value. So if, yeah, that's what I just said. So there's, as a data analyst, there's going to be many, many times when you're going to get a database that has missing values, and you need to determine whether uh, the you should be working with these missing values or you should somehow account for them. What do I mean by this? So for example, if let's say you wanted to count the average points that LeBron has uh, accounted for in the first two games. So let's ignore these actual values. I'm just going to make up some data. So I'm going to say in the first this is the first game, and this is the second game. And then here you have whether he played or not. So he played in the first game, but in the second game, he didn't play. So it's going to be a null. And then for points, I have that in the first game, he scored, let's say, 30 points. And then in the second game, well, he wasn't playing. So you have a null. So if you were going to take an average, let's say your boss says, okay, we have 2 games in this season so far. How many points is LeBron scoring per game on average? The correct answer will be 30 points because every time he's present, he would have scored 30 points. So you would say, okay, 30 divided by 1 equals 30 because that's the average times that LeBron played. So this is the average score that he would get. Where with the null value, if you don't account properly for this null value, imagine if you accidentally put a 0 in here, then you would say, oh, on average, LeBron, he played 30 plus 0 divided by 2 equals 15. On average, he scores 15 points per game, which is not true. When he's playing, he's doing better. It's just that he didn't play. So that's why it's better to just have a null rather than a 0. Because then if you have zeros where you should have nulls, it's going to mess up your computations. Um, the other situation that you could have, in this case, these nulls are meaningful. But sometimes you could have nulls where you were not able to collect the data. So imagine the census, and the United States takes information about their citizens every 10 years through the census, and they go home by home asking how many people do they live here, what are your demographics, what's your income, and all this data to be able to come up with this information. But imagine that there was a glitch in the system and the data for the age of people was not captured. Only for out of 100 million people that were surveyed, you have data only for 2 people. Can you take the average of that age to say, on average, how old are people in the US? No, because that wouldn't be a good representation of the US. So in that case, it's like a missing value that in the database it would also be represented as null, but it would be important, and we should be proactive about being vocal about it. So either, hey, there's this issue with this database, someone needs to go and collect this data so I can properly analyze it. I'm not going to analyze it because there's a lot of data missing, or just yeah, just suggest like I can't do the analysis because we don't have enough data that represents. So there's these 2 scenarios where you have missing data because there was an issue with how the data was collected, and you need to determine whether, okay, if 100 million people were surveyed and we have the information for 90 million people, maybe it's okay if we're missing only 10 million people, the data for 10 million people, given that we have 90 million people, maybe it's okay. But if you have like uh, 95 million rows missing, then you have a problem. So you have to make that call. There's not really like a rule of thumb. Of course, if you're missing more than half of your data, that's a big problem. But once it's like you have more than half of the data, it's hard to tell. You have to just rely on your domain knowledge to make that call, whether you can make that analysis, whether you need to somehow imputate that value, so or you need to ask for more data. Um, so you have those 2 scenarios. Here in LeBron, these missing values are okay. You don't need to do anything about them because they actually mean something. It means that, yeah, that data does not exist because LeBron didn't play. But if it's like, oh, you're just missing, I don't know, the date because it didn't get collected, that will be a problem. Yeah, I agree. 90 million person survey would be insane. I should have picked a smaller number for the example. Um, all right. So now that we know in this specific case the null values are meaningful, then it's fine for now. Um, so how do we discover how many null values do we have in our data set? So how do we work with these null values? So let's say you wanted to know you wanted to extract all the points of this data set. So let's restart and let's write that query. So let's say if I wanted to have to see all the points of this table, how do I do? What do I do? So I'd say select my column name, points from King James, and I just run this query and I see all my points. But let's say I wanted to look at my null values for whatever reason. You would say where points is null. So this is the key here. You wouldn't say points equals null. You would say points is null. And that's how you extract all the rows that have a null. So, for example, let's say you wanted all the columns where the points are missing. So here you have them. So you're filtering by this. So one thing that is important in here is that the null is never with the equals. If you put an equals, it's just gonna get confused because it's gonna try to match something that exactly says null, and that's not the case. You want to match against the missing value. So you have to use is. You just memorize it that you have to use is. Um, so let's say you wanted, I like what Jennifer said in the chat. What if you wanted to know how many nulls do you have in here? If you wanted to count them by hand, that would be painful. But the good news is that you can just say here, count. And because we're filtering by the nulls, we run it and we get here, no, it will be just count star. So how many rows? And then you get how many null values do you have? So let me write this in here because I kind of improvised it. It's not in the guide. So this is how many null values in the points column you have. So let me share this in the chat so you can have it in there. Um, let's see. Okay. What if we wanted to take an average of the points that are missing? That kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but let's say average of the points that are of the points where the points are missing, and it's just blank because you can't take an average of values that are missing. So that's fine. But a more interesting question would be, what is the average of the points that LeBron scored where the value is not missing? So you just have to add here is not null, and then you get the average. So let me show you real quick what is it that it's happening. We're doing select the points column from King James, where the points is not null, where the points are not missing. And if I run this query, and I'm making sure that I'm running this query by selecting it, and then I run it here. So here I see all the points, and I'm basically just taking the average of all the points, and I'm excluding all the missing values. And that's what happened in this query up here. And this is the average. So I get the average. Last time we said, okay, if we don't like these ugly titles, we can give it a nickname. So let's give it a nickname. So as, and the nickname, the alias can be something like points, like average points per game, something like this. So if we do this, it changes the title here, so it looks nicer. And the next thing that you can optionally do is if you don't like that the points are like showing too many decimals, you could say on you can surround this column with the round function to help with that. So you say round, and then in parentheses, notice that the parentheses only has this. It doesn't have the nickname. So you put this in the parentheses, and it rounds it up. So you see it. Here it got too rounded. Maybe you want two decimal places. So the way you do it is that before you close the last parenthesis, you say comma and as many decimals you want. So let's say you want 2 decimals. And there you go. So the average points per game for LeBron is 30.27. So let me copy and paste this into the chat if you needed. So the reason why I'm putting parentheses around the points is because I'm using a function. It's the same way in Excel. In Excel, you would say average, and then you would say column B2 to B10. But in here, we don't have that Excel structure. We just have to put the name of the column. So this is the name of the column. But this is very similar to how Excel functions work. And same with the round. So round is the function, and then in parentheses, you put what you need. So in this case, the column, comma, how many decimals you need. The two is how many decimals you want. So for example, if I wanted 5 decimals, I could change this for 5 and then you see it in here. But I'm just gonna keep it 2, so I only have 2 decimals. Um, if you can think of a different way to achieve the same answer, that's perfectly valid as well. Just because I'm showing it one way doesn't mean that is the only way. That's very common in SQL. We're actually going to be doing some exercises where I'm going to be showing you different ways to achieve the same answer. And there you go. So in the desktop version, if you're not able to see where to write, it's the same way as in Codio. You have to click on this symbol to have a window here that allows you to write. So make sure you're clicking on this symbol here to have this like place to write open. In SQL, in Code, it was already there because we clicked it on the first day and it probably stayed open. But every time you have to, if it's not open, you have to click here. All right, fantastic. So this was actually the first question of our bonuses. No, not this one. This one. So the first question, it says that does our player average 30 points, at least 30 points in each game where they're active? And that's why we're ignoring the rows where it's null because that's where he was inactive. And so, yes, it's more than 30 points. It's 30.27. So he does get his uh, $500,000. So we can keep track of that in here. So LeBron is going to be saying, Kashin, Kashin. All right. So let's go with the first exercise for today, where you'll have the opportunity to practice. So the first exercise is write a query that returns the first 5 rows. So this immediately should make you think of limit in the data set where GP is null. And here, even this English language gives you the hint of that you need to use where. So I'll give you 2 minutes for that, and then we'll do it together.
2 minutes left. left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right, so let's do it together. I'm happy to see some of those answers in the chat. So the question is, write a query that returns the first 5 rows. So that tells me, okay, there's going to be a limit 5 at some point in the data set where GP is null. So I have to say select star because they didn't specify which columns they wanted. So I'm just gonna write all the columns from King James where GP is null. Notice how even by asking the question in English, it kind of gave us this hint in here. Look, it's exactly the same thing. So here you go. So here we see the first 5 games where LeBron didn't play. So the first 5 games where LeBron didn't play was game number 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, and this was against these teams. So let me copy and paste this query in the chat. So you have it in here for your reference. And then now let's do exercise number 2. So you can also practice. This one says, write a query that shows G, which is the game number, home away, up, the opponent, for only the games that LeBron didn't play in. So very similar to our previous query, but in this case, instead of getting all the columns, it specifically wants these columns right here. And there's no limit compared to the previous one. So I'll give you 2 minutes for this one as well, and then we'll do it together.
2 minutes left. Left. 30 seconds left. Left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right, I see all the queries coming in the chat. So let's do it together. So it says write a query. So select, write a query that shows G. So G, home, away, up, so the opponent, from King James or table, where, so it specifically is asking where LeBron didn't play in. So the best variable to use in here would be a GP, because that this one s- captures that if it's null is because he didn't play in. Any of these other columns would also work, but just like from what the column means, GP makes more sense to use. So GP is is null. So now it should show how many rows, how many games did LeBron played in. So it shows the number of the game, it shows whether it was home or away, and it shows the opponent. And we get 26 rows. Look that here SQL tells us how many rows, and as well here it says result 26 rows. So he played in 26 he didn't play in 26 games. All right, so we are doing this exercise to build towards our next question, because our next question says if LeBron played at least in 65% of the games, he would get another $1 million. So let's see if LeBron deserves all that money. So now we have to think about calculating percentages. So before we even think about SQL, let's remember how to calculate percentages. So typically when you calculate a percentage, you have the how do I put it? Like the portion, oh, not the portion, like number of times that something is relevant over the total of times. So for example, let's say if I want to know what percentage of the time, what percentage of the week someone works out, like in if I'm thinking of days, what percentage of days does someone work out per week? It would be okay if someone works out 2 days and there's 7 days per week, that would be 2/7. And then if you divide 2 divided by 7, the exact number will be 0.285 and so on. So they work out approximately 28% of the time, 28% of the days. You could say that. So that's what we're going to be doing. But of course, with the games, how many days were in total versus how many games did LeBron played in. This number is in decimal. So this is a fraction. This one is in decimal format. And if you wanted it in percentage format, you would just multiply that number by 100 and this would give you 28.5 percentage. So this is in percentage. So if you want it in percentage, you just multiply by 100. So that's what we are going to be doing. So let's do it. So to calculate the percentage of null values, so how many games did he miss? You need to do the following. You need to count the number of null values, so the number of games he missed. Then you need to count the how many games there were. We know that there were 82 games because we know that in a season there's 82 games, but we're gonna try to do it with code so we can practice more SQL. And then you're gonna grab those two values and divide them by each other. So the number of times of the relevant thing, which in this case is like what games LeBron missed, how many games did he missed over the total number of games. And if you wanted that number is going to be in a decimal. If you wanted it in a percentage format, you would multiply by 100. So just your everyday percentage calculation. So how do you go about that? Let's go step by step. So the first step is to count the number of nulls in the GP column because you want to know how many games he missed. So you would say select. How do we count? We count star from our table, King James, where GP is null. So this is, I think we had already done this at the beginning. Sponsored by Jennifer. Actually, I remember that was Jennifer's question. So if we wanted to count how many nulls we have, you could do it the hard way. The hard way would be select star from King James, where GP is null, and then manually count them. But you have the power of SQL with you, so let's just not count them manually. Let's just do it this way. So this is how we get this 26. If I don't want this count star title to show here like this, if I want to have a nicer name, I would say something like as total games. So the total games were 26. So this is the step number one. So step number one, uh, count null values. Now let's do step number two. So step number two is to count total, I guess this is total missed games. This makes more sense. Total missed games. And then for step number two, you want to count how many games there were in total. So count total games in the season. So that's going to be select count star as total season games from King James. And we don't need to filter by anything because we just want to count how many rows do we have. So that's why we don't have the where GP is null. So we run this and we have 82. So now we have somewhat of a problem, which is we have two queries with these two results. The first query produces this result. The second query produces this result. And in theory, we want to say 26 divided by 82. So you could do it the easy way. So step three is going to be divide step one by step two. So how do we put these two together, these two values together? So there's several ways that you can approach it. So that's what we're gonna be doing next. But let me send you these queries first in the chat. So we can't really, maybe like your first temptation would be to grab this like here and divide by 82. That could be an alternative. So this is fine in the sense that, yes, 26 divided by 2. Let's do it by calculator so we know where we're heading. So 26 divided by 82. So the result that we want to be able to achieve with SQL without leaving SQL is 31.7 or 0.31. If you were working in an office and this is the answer that you need, it's completely fine if you use the calculator. You don't have to write a really complex SQL query if it's something that you could get in a calculator. But sometimes if it's something that you have to do and again and again and again, it's better to do it in SQL. So you have the query written and you don't have to like leave SQL and open a calculator. So it depends if it's like a one-time question or, for example, if you had to do this for all the basketball players that played in the season, then it would be better to write the query so you can recycle the query with all the different players. So that's why we want to try it here. So in here, I divided by 82, and you see this 0. This is because SQL is automatically rounding to the closest digit, which is 0. So it's not like the answer is wrong. It's just that the formatting is not quite there. So to fix it, this is a trick that you would do. You multiply by 100, and you have to multiply by 100 at the beginning of the query. So multiply by 100.0. By doing this trick, you go from having the number in a decimal format, in a percentage format, And so because you're multiplying by 100, but also by adding this point zero tells SQL, hey, it's okay to have decimals. Otherwise, SQL sometimes just tries to give you a whole number. So now let's run this. And this works. This is giving us our result. However, there's a problem here. We're writing this 82 here. So this is not very pure in the sense that ideally you will be able to write this in SQL as well. So you don't have to manually ask, what if you just made a mistake and you got confused and you thought the season had 86 games, then your calculation will be wrong. It's better to extract the number from this query and use it in here. So how do we extract that number and put it in here? That's what we're gonna do after the break. I think this is a good stopping point. So let me send you this query in the meantime. We have figured out so far how to extract the full number. Oops, let me select this correctly. The full number, so we're able to visualize it. But the issue is that we're using this 82. How do we do it with SQL? That's what we're going to be doing after the break. So I'm going to give it to Juan. And we'll have a short break as usual, only 5 minutes, and then I'll see you in 5 minutes.
All right, perfect. We going in for a 5 minute break then. I am going to pause the recording and stream the timer. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Go stretch your legs. All right, everyone. Y'all set? Let's continue with some more SQL.
Thank you, Juan. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So, where were we? So, before the break, we said, okay, we want to know what is the percentage of games that LeBron missed. So, for this, we need to compute the count of all the games he missed. So, all the games where GP is null. We had our 26. Then, our second step is to count the total number of games, which is 82. So result is going to be 26 divided by 82. And if we want it in a percentage format, we would say times 100. So that's what we did here. Here we grabbed this first query, which gives us the 26, and we divided that 26 by 82, and we multiplied it by 100 to get this number. I multiplied it by 100.0, so I would get the decimal numbers. The point zero triggers SQL to write the decimal number. If I delete the point zero, then it just rounds it up to the nearest whole number. So that's why I'm putting the point zero, so I have the decimals in there. And then Drew actually had a fantastic idea. Could I put a query within a query? Because we have just two queries. So yes, you actually can do that. That's not how we have the solution in Codio, but I actually like that solution. So I'm going to show both. So if we go the way Drew suggested, you, instead of writing this 82, you need this result, right? Of the second query, which is this 82. So instead of writing this 82, you open a big parenthesis and copy everything in here. Just make sure you're not copying the semicolon, because otherwise it breaks. So not the semicolon, but everything else. You copy it in there, and then you run this, and it works. It still gives you the result. My only but with this solution is that it makes it kind of hard to understand what is going on. Like if I deleted all of this and I showed it to someone, I don't think it would be very easy for someone to figure out what is going on. So that will be the only but to that solution. But I liked your way of thinking, Drew. So thank you for that suggestion. I'm gonna put it in the chat in case people want this approach, but I'm gonna do it now the way they solved this issue in Codio. So the way they solved this issue in Codio was actually by creating an auxiliary column. What do I mean by this? So let's look at our GP for a second. So from select GP from King James, and I'm gonna run this. And this is counting, this is just showing the GP, but I could create another column where if LeBron played, Or yeah, if LeBron played is a 0. If LeBron didn't play is a 1, and so on. Because then I can just sum all these ones and it would tell me because we have a 1 every time there's a null. So I can just sum all of those and know how many times LeBron missed a game. So that's the approach that we have in the guide. So let me show it to you. That way we also practice our case friend. So let's create that other column. So we have select GP, comma, and we're gonna do a case. So if you guys remember case. So case, when GP is null, I want a 1, so I'm able to count it. Else 0, so I don't have to deal with it. And then I end my case, and I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. So I have my GP column and this new column that I created with this case. So let me run it. Ah, I have an issue here. Else 0 and let's see what's the issue. Uh Near 1 when null is then 1. See what I did? I had an error because I forgot to type then, and I just read through the error and I said, okay, the error is near 1. So I looked at 1 and that's automatically realized, oh, I forgot to write then. So don't be scared of errors when they happen, just read through them. But also, I wanted to get an error so I could play this.
Why am I feeling so wrong?
Okay, too much. So let's run this query. And there we have it. So let's look at it. And then here, this big case is creating this column that just has a 1 whenever he didn't play. So I could just, I don't need this column anymore, this GP. And I could just say, okay, I'm gonna sum all this big case in here. So that gives me the 26. So I'm just gonna put it in one line so it's a little bit easier to digest. So basically this is just showing me how many games did he miss. And then from here you can just say 100.0 times this value divided by count star, because count star is always going to give you just the count of rows. And let me just make this bigger so you can see it. And I run this, and there you go. And here, well, I want to say as, let's give it a name so it doesn't look bad. So percent null. So this looks better now. And maybe some of you are wondering, well, could I round this to 2 decimals? Yes, you could. So you could say round. And round works the same way as Excel. It just takes everything in here and it just rounds the number. And I need to say comma by how many digits. So I'm going to say 2 digits. And there you go. So when you first look at it, it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on, but we did it step by step and we get this result. Which way did you like better? Maybe you like this way better because you don't have to write a subquery inside of it. Or maybe you like this subquery pathway. So both options are completely valid. So let me send this in the chat. And now we have this solution. All right, cool. So that's our next question. Our next question was, um, does he play at least 65% of the season? So this is like the games he missed. He missed 31% of the games. So let's bring our calculator again. I guess we could have computed here where is not null, and then it would have given us the result. But anyways, now that we have gone in this path, 100 minus 31.71, It's 68. So he did play at least 65% of the season. So he indeed gets another 500K. So he already has $1 million in as a bonus. So LeBron is having a good year. I wish I was having the year that LeBron is having. All right. So now let's go with the next exercise. Which teams did LeBron miss the most games against with? So for exercise number 3, I want you to approach it like a job interview. I know that many of you are not going to get the correct answer right away because it takes practice. That's completely normal. But the worst thing that you could do in a job interview is to just freeze and say, I have no idea how to solve it. So what do? You start working through each one, the table. So the first thing, if I have no idea how to begin, what I would do is just to look at the table. So select star from King James. And then I look at the table and I'm like, okay, this is what I have. It says, which teams did LeBron miss the most games? So I'm like, oh, probably I have to filter by GP because I want to see the games that he missed. Maybe I want to filter by opponent. And I want to know how many times he missed those games. So I'm going to have a group by there. So even if you don't get the query working, as long as you think and you start writing something. So you say, okay, I think I'm going to have a group by. I think I'm going to need GP. I think I'm going to need a where. Even if in the interview, especially if you're interviewing for a junior position, even if you don't finish the query, if you're able to explain your thinking process, that's valuable because they know that given more time, maybe you would have been able to get the query right. So if you're taking a job interview, don't freeze. Just take it step by step. Start with little by little until you build the final query and hopefully you get the query. But if you don't get the query, don't panic. As long as you were constantly explaining your thinking process, you should be good because that's what employers value the most. So your thinking process, not that you got it right, but you have no idea what's going on. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this so you can try it on your own and then we'll do it together.
Seconds left. Left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
I don't see that many results in the chat. I'll give you 1 more minute. and then we'll do it together. But also let me know if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer those questions. All right, okay. I see some of those queries coming in. I assume some people are still working on their queries. So let's work through this together. How would I approach this if I was in a job interview? I was given this query. Notice that the question is very broad, like nothing really tells me what do I need to be using in SQL. So how would I approach it? So I would read the question and it says which teams. So this automatically makes me think, okay, I'm gonna need up because that's the one that has the teams. Did LeBron miss the most? Oh, so I'm gonna need GP because that's the one that tells me how much has it been missing the most games against with. So, okay, for starters, I have this, but I want to count how many did he missed like per team. So I don't really need the ones where he played. So I'm gonna filter by the ones where he didn't play. So that will be my next step. So where GP is null. So, okay, we're making some progress. Now I have all these teams, and yeah, you could like manually count them if you wanted to. So here I have like one, two, and I think that's it, two OKC. So I think that's Oklahoma City Thunders. So you could do that, but you could also do it through through SQL. So let's do it through SQL. I no longer need this column, so I'm just gonna get rid of it. But I need a way to count how many do I have, right? So you say comma, count star, but I need to count per opponent. So you would say group by, you need a group by opponent. And there you go. And then maybe this count looks bad. So let's just give it a nickname as missed games. And if you wanted to sort by the like most missed games to the least amount of missed games, we hadn't seen this one. This is a new one. So order by the name of the column. So in this case, it's gonna be missed games. And it automatically does it in ascending order. So if you want it descending, you have to write this descending like this. Um, if you wanted to make sure it's ascending, the default behavior is ascending, but if you don't remember which behavior is by default, you can also write here ascending, but in this case would be descending. So he missed the most number of games against the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunders, because he missed 3 games with the two of them. So notice that when I was answering the query, is not like I miraculously, like by a miracle, I started writing the whole query. I took it step by step until I finally got an answer that made sense. So I've been coding in SQL for many, many years. So most of the time, if it's a query like this, I don't make a mistake. Of course, this is of a bigger query. I still make mistakes. You're always going to be mistakes. But the most important thing is that when you're a junior person and you're working through a query and in a job interview, you explain your thinking process. Because even if you, like, I don't know, maybe you forgot the group by and you're like, oh, but I would like the answer to show it by each one of the teams, then the person knows that eventually you will be able to figure it out. So it's important that you don't get stuck. You always explain your thinking process, even if you don't get the final query in the job interview. So, and the best way to get good at these queries is to practice and practice and practice and practice. So let me copy and paste this into the chat so you can have that query for you. All right, awesome. I see many of those queries coming in, so I'm happy to see how you see it. If by whatever reason you wanted to order by the team, not the missed games, then you could change it and say up by this is what it is for now. So let's go with the next exercise. So now for the next exercise, this one is a little bit more complicated. It says, now write a query to find out if James LeBron gets a bonus based on these criteria. Has a player played against every team during the season at least one time? If so, they get a 100K bonus. So this question is a question that makes sense, but it's not immediately obvious what you need to do in SQL. And in fact, when I wrote it, when usually when I am preparing these classes, what I do is that I don't look at the answer given by Codio. I try the query myself, and I actually came up with a completely different query than the query that Codio is suggesting, which is completely normal. And I'm sure everyone in here might come up with different queries. So just because it's different, as long as you get the same result, doesn't mean that it's wrong. So there's multiple avenues to get to the same result. I'll show you three avenues after I give you some time to try it on your own. But that's why I'm not gonna give you hints, because I want to see how people would think about this. And don't be afraid to write a query even if it's not a fully working query. Treat it as a job interview. How would you approach this question? What steps would you take, like little steps until you build your final query? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this one because this one is a little bit more complicated. Please, please, please try it. It's very important that you have that exercise of like trying to figure it out, not just looking at the answer, because looking at the answer is always going to make sense. Most of the time it's going to make sense. But thinking about to come up with that answer is a skill that you need to develop. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then we'll do it together.
5 minutes left.
And also feel free to ask any questions that you might have. All right. So let's do it together. If you're still working through the exercise, feel free to continue working. Feel free to just switch and pay attention, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to show you how I read the question and how I first interpreted it. I still got the correct answer, but it's very different from the solution that whoever created this case produced. So I'll show you both. I'll show you first how I approached it. So I read the question. So let me look at the data set. I don't know why looking at the data set always kind of helps me. So I'm gonna look at the data set. And okay, I have my data set, and it says, has a player played, so has LeBron played against every team during the season at least one time? If so, they get a 100K bonus. So my first thinking was, okay, I need to see a list of teams that he played against with against with. So I say, okay, select. I need GP to be able to filter by the ones where he didn't play, and I need the team. So up from King James. So I run this query and I see this, but I need the ones where he actually played with. So where GP is not null. So these are the teams that he played against with. So I don't really need GP anymore because I only care about the opponents. And I care about select distinct opponents because I don't care to see Houston twice. I only need to know that he played against the Houston team at least once. So I run this query and I get this list. This is the list of all the teams he played against with. Then I created another list, very similar. So I just copied and pasted, but list of teams that he missed a game with. So he missed a game. So where GP is null. So now I have this list of all the games, all the teams that at some point he skipped. So basically, what I want is okay, these are all the ones where he actually played in. And this one is where he missed a game. And the question is, well, did he miss any teams completely? So maybe he missed the San Antonio Spurs at some point, but he did play with them at some point in here. So I want to say where GP is null and GP and opponent, the opponent not in this result here, this list in here, because that means that he played with this team. So I just copied and pasted it in here. And it tells me that he did not play against the Cho and the Phi. I guess, I don't know, Philadelphia, and I don't know what Cho is. And those two teams were not in this list, which is the list of teams that he played in. So he never played with these two guys. So that's how I arrived at the question. So he didn't play against every team because he missed these two teams. If he had played against every team, he would have not missed those two teams. So that's how I approached the question. So let me copy and paste this query into the chat so you have it. But I actually kind of like better the approach that they had in the SQL case and whoever created this guide. So let me show you what was their approach. So their approach was the following one. They wanted to create a table. The table would look the following way. So you will have opponent. So here you will have the name of the opponent. I don't know, San Antonio Spurs, whatever it is. Here you will have the number of games missed. Here you will have the number of games played against that team. And then here you will have the percentage missed of these games, which is basically if this is column 2, so it's column 2 divided by column 3. And if this is equals 100%, it means that it missed 100% of the games with them. So this is another approach where you visualize the result. You can use pen and paper to visualize your result, and now you work towards writing this query. So how do we write this query? So we have select. We need first our opponent. What else do we need? We need something to count the games that they played for. So let's say GP, we need GP. Let's do a case. So basically we show when they played for that for with that team. So case when GP is null, then 1, else 0, and so let me just put it in 1 so it's easier to read. And from King James. So here I'm not done, but here I can visualize what is going on. So basically here you have the opponent, and if he missed a game with that opponent is a 1. So now I can sum this and I would know how many games I missed in here. So um, I no longer need this GP because like you only care about the opponent. So I'm gonna get rid of this GP. And I have this, but I would like to sum this to know how many games I missed. So you could say sum, but you want to know how many games you missed per opponent. So you have to say where, no, group by opponent. So now this shows you how many games they missed. So I can call this as games missed. So you run this. Okay, so now you have a count of how many games they missed. If you wanted a count of how many games you had with each team, you only have to put count star. And because we have this group by, it's going to count how many games do we have with each team, regardless of whether LeBron played with them or not. So basically, it's a pivot table. We're doing a pivot table here. So as games played. So now I see this. And basically, I want to know if there's something where you have the same number of games that were missed that are the same number of games that the team played against that team, because that would mean that LeBron just missed all the games that the team played against that other team. So by manual inspection, actually, here I can see that it's 2 equals 2. So Cho is one of those teams. But you could have two approaches. So here, if we wanted to practice the CTE, you could make all of this a CTE. So let's practice the CTE. So you could say with CTE games as, and everything in a big parenthesis. Don't forget to get rid of the semicolon. And then here you could say, okay, select star from CTE games. So here you have this again, but now you could say where CTE from CTE games, where games missed equals games played. So basically here we're matching these two. So wherever these two values are the same, that's like the place where LeBron missed all those games. So again, the same result I had gotten through my query earlier. Here we're getting this, okay, LeBron missed 2 games out of the 2 games that the team played with this other team. Same with Fee. So this is one way to do it with a CTE. And look, we had the opportunity to practice a CTE and see why this is more useful because it would have now you can just focus once you have this, you can focus on the rest of the query. So let me copy and paste this into the chat. But the other approach is without a CTE. So the other approach is with the percentage. So let me get rid of the CTE. Let's go back to how we had it before. So without the CTE, it will be this way. And then now you need to compute another column to get the percentage. So to get the percentage, you would say, okay, 100.0, because remember we need to multiply by 100 to get the percentage, and the point zero, so we get the decimal, times all of this, which is the number of games missed, basically that column, divided by the count star. And let's give it a name. The name, let it be as percent missed. Not the semicolon. Semicolon only at the end. And now you run this and you get this result. So here, well, and then if you wanted to see it in order, you would say order by percent missed. And we will want that to be descending. So we see the biggest number at the top. So here we see, okay, 100% of the games with the Fee team and the Cho team were missed. LeBron missed 100% of those games. So this was another approach. Notice that I show you 3 approaches. I showed you first with the subquery. I thought about the 2 select distincts, and then I used the subquery. The second approach was with the CTE. And the third approach is this approach with the percentage. And there's probably more approaches. It's not the only 3 that exist. Do you have a favorite approach? Do you think of a new approach? Let me know in the chat. So let me send you this query in the chat so you have it for your reference. I know that was a lot of queries. So my big recommendation is at home during the weekend or whenever you have some free time, go again through these exercises and try to come up with the answer without looking at the answer and see how far can you get in on your own. Maybe you get the same answer. Maybe you get a different answer that is correct. Maybe you get stuck somewhere along the way, so you can take a sneak peek into the answer. But practice is key here with SQL. So let me see the chat. Yeah, so you have those 3 approaches. I see a good question. So in SQL, technically you could have all of this in one line. SQL is not picky. Python is picky once we start with Python, but SQL is not picky with how you separate your lines. You could have all of this in one line. The reason why sometimes I make one choice or another choice is to facilitate the reading. Whatever makes the query easier to read, I keep it. Because for example, this produces the same result, but this is like very hard to read. So I try to write like here, I was trying to write like column by column so I can see, okay, here I have first column, second column, second column, third column, and then my fourth column in here. So just to help me visualize what is going on in the query. But technically, you could have everything in a single line. The SQL doesn't care. All right. So I saw a question earlier today, not really related to the grammar of SQL. Well, before I go into that rabbit hole, let me open this. So the question is, does LeBron play against every team at least once during the season? The answer is no, because he missed 2 teams. So he does not get this 100K as a bonus. So he so far has 1 million. And then LeBron says like, boo, I wanted the 100K. Why? Bad analyst. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so yeah, we have this in here. The question I got in the chat was, how do I save the query? Now that for the people that are working on their own computers, now you can save queries if you wanted to. The easiest way, if you have a Word document, you can just copy and paste them into the Word document. But you could also click here on this floppy disk to save them. So you can click on this floppy disk and you can give it a name. Say, what was this? Exercise number 4, right? So you could say exercise number 4 and you save it. And now it's here in your computer. And you can double click on it and then you say yes. Oh, what happened? Yes. And then it opens in here. If it opens in something else, like my computer thought that another program was more appropriate, that's fine, because then you can click here on this button and find the query that you saved and open it. It's going to be a .sql file. So not necessary, but if there was that question on how to save queries and maybe open them later on, again, you have to use one of these buttons. So this floppy disk is to save the query. This one is to open the query if you already saved it. And this one is to create more tabs in here. You can have as many tabs with many different queries, like if you're working on different questions at the same time. So I thought I would just show you that real quick. All right, cool. So let's go on to the next exercise. Exercise number 5. So exercise number 5 says, in order to find the answer to this question regarding James LeBron's bonus, which is, has a player played in more home games than away games? If so, they get a 250K bonus. If not, then they just don't get it. So this one, same thing. You could answer it in different ways. Um, so I'll give you, given how much time we have left in the class, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I'll show you one possible answer, but maybe there's other answers that are correct as well. And yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes and then we'll do it together. And of course, as always, let me know if there's any questions.
2 minutes left. Left. Seconds left. Seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right, so let's do this one together. I actually solved this query the same way as Beatrice and Hank. So we're in the same wavelength. So basically, okay, let's take a look at our data again. Select start from King James. And yeah, so here we have our data. But the question is home games. So home away. So basically I want to know how many games did LeBron played in that were home and that they were away. So basically I need home away and I'm gonna need briefly GP. But I only care about the ones where he actually played. So I'm gonna say where GP is not null. Okay, so these are the ones that he played in. So I don't really need the GP anymore. I need to count how many homes and how many aways I had. So then I just group by. So I can say, okay, group by home, 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 away. And I need to add here some type, like I need to be able to count. So count. So count how many times you had home games and how many times you had away games. And we are not considering the games where LeBron was not present because we want to know exactly for him what is this statistic. So from King James, where GP is not null. Let me see. I don't know why I got that error. I was probably like selecting something. I need to rerun it. Um, okay, so here is the result. So basically, the question is, did he play in more home games? And yes, he did play in more home games indeed. So let me share this answer into the chat. There is another way to find that answer. I'm not gonna explain it so we can get to the next exercise, but I'll put it in the chat. Is basically using the percentage approach, and it looks like this. But I like this way better. It's simpler. But in case you wanted to see another answer, I'll put it in the chat as well. So that would be a yes for this one. So he's gonna be cashing in into those $250,000 of a dollar. And let's do exercise number 6 before we run out of time. So the last question is to answer. The last question is, has a player played in a game every month of the season? If so, they get a 50K bonus. So I would approach this one the same way I approached the ones about the if he had played at least once each team. So first, I would create a list of months where he did play in. So I would say, okay, select distinct month from King James, where GP is not null. So when he played, so he played in these months. He played in October, November, December, January, February, March, and April. And then I would say, okay, I'm gonna create a list of months where he did not play in. So basically, again, I have to do the same thing. So select distinct month from my table, which is King James, where GP is null. So the months where he didn't play. So I run this. And then now I answer my question. Well, I could just answer it by visually inspecting it. He played in all the months. And then, of course, in some months, he was benched for some games, but it seems like he played in all the months. So I could just answer that. But if I wanted to do it in a SQL way, I would say, okay, I want to know, did he play in every month? So I would say, okay, here is my list of this this query gives me my list when he didn't play, and I want end month not in this list because that's the months where he didn't play, where he did play in. So basically, I'm subtracting like, okay, out of the months where he didn't play a game, which months of those months he also played a game. So there were some games that he missed, but some games that he played. And the result is going to be the months where he didn't play at all. And I run this query, and don't be fooled by this blank screen. In here, you can actually see when I run it, it says 0 results. So that means that he did play every month. So that was my approach. I'm gonna copy and paste it into the chat. I'd be curious to know if you can think of a different approach. The approach that the Codio guide took is the same as the previous one with the percentage. So basically, this exercise was a repeat of exercise. Let me tell you which exercise. Um, exercise number 4. So exercise number 6 was a repeat of exercise number 4, but instead of teams, we were looking at months. So same thing, just different variable. So the way Cody approached it is here with total games, games missed, and the percentage missed. So if you prefer this way also works. So I'm gonna put it in the chat. And that means that he did play at least one game every month of the season. And that means that he gets this bonus. That means that in the end, let's compute this. He got 500K. He got this 500K. He got this 250K. And he got this 50K. He didn't get this 100K. So he's gonna get $1.3 million as a bonus. And then LeBron is super excited about that. If I were LeBron and I got $1.3 million as a bonus, I would also be dancing like the boys from High School Musical. So that's the end of the case today. I know that we went a little bit fast, but there was a lot to be covered. But don't worry, you have this video recorded. So my big suggestion would be try going over the case again, practice, and try to answer the query before looking at the answer and see if you can get it on your own. If you want some additional practice, there's this website called Hacker Rank. So I'll send the link in the chat. You can practice directly on this website. So you can say like solve challenge, and it shows you like a table, and it asks you a question, and you can try here your little select statement and see if the code would run. So this is the best way. SQL is something that they're always going to ask in your interviews, so please practice SQL a lot. Next week, you are going to meet with Swati. You're going to have more SQL. This is the last time I'll see you for SQL, but you still have 2 exciting lectures with Swati. So make sure that if you want to switch to your computer, you have downloaded this. You ask in advance help to your TAs on how to install DV browser correctly, or if you have any issues with Codio. And then I'll see you next time. Next time I'll see you, it's going to be for one of the Python lectures. So I'm excited for that.